not these games, should we be running them at all?
All right. Good morning. Welcome aboard. How are we all this morning? Good stuff. So everybody surviving the pandemic, all right, aye. So good morning, folks. How are we all today? I hope we're all fine. Oh, I got in the clock. That's funny, definitely until you drive. Right, anyway. Welcome aboard. I'll give you a few minutes. Happy Friday to you too, John. Right, here we go. Janice, James, Rose, John, Charlotte. Good morning, Charlotte. Hello, Barbara. Hi, Lynn. Good morning, Robert. Nice to see you there again. Morning, Alexander. Hey, Rose. We're starting to get there. Another lovely day, folks. It's me in the truck in Hamilton. Of course, the Hamilton races, where it's about 20 degrees. A wee bit stuffy today. Sky's starting to clear. It's going to be absolutely scorchio this afternoon. Scorchio. It's going to be absolutely murder. So get your sunscreen on, folks. So that's it, Indy Truck Davey in the truck, coming to you today from Hamilton, where it's 20 degrees, the sky's clearing, and it's going to be bloody scorchio. That's your weather forecast for Hamilton. If you want to know the weather's like where you are, look out the bloody window. Right, what did I do with my coffee? Not much for you today, because we're heading into the silly season, folks. At some point during the silly season, in August some point, I'm going to take another week off because the wife's got her holidays in August. So that's the plan. Some point in August, because the silly season, both Holyrood and the House of Thieves and Carpetbaggers will be shut. So that'll give us an opportunity to take a wee rest. Things will get a wee bit funnier over the next couple of weeks because, well, it's all stupidness that's in the papers, and it'll be all stupid articles that are kicking about. But the only thing that will still be alive will be the Real Law Project and Open Democracy taking Westminster to court, because as we know, the Cabinet's not in recess, it's just the Parliament itself. Okie dokie, right, let's get started. We'll start with the coronavirus update, and then we'll move forward to review what little there is in the news, alright? And you can bet your boots the pandemic will feature, alright? So here we go, coronavirus update. These are the numbers from yesterday, the 22nd of the 7th, 2021. Eyes down, ready for a full house. No, I don't want to make any jokes out of this. Tested in Scotland since the pandemic reached their shores, 2,413,088. And that was plus 6,870 new people tested from Wednesday to Thursday. Tested positive since the pandemic reached our shores, 335,966, and that was plus 1,825 new cases from Wednesday to Thursday. In hospital, there are 488 COVID patients, down 41, of which 58 are in the intensive care units, and that's up 7. Vaccinated, there have been 3,989,927 people in Scotland have had a vaccine shot, an increase of 2,835 people from Wednesday to Thursday. And that's no good. Only 2,000 odds. What was that? Just read it out to you. 2,835 in one day, Scotland wide. No enough. Right, of that 3,989,927, 3,028,271 people have had both jags, an increase of 17,766. That equates to 68.1% of all adults in Scotland have had both jags. Now, we really need to get to the 85-86% here to get to what they're calling immunity within the community, right, or herd immunity, whatever you want to call it. There will always be a percentage that can't be vaccinated for various reasons, whether it be religious fundamentalists, whether it be people who don't want the vaccine for philosophical reasons, or whether it be those who can't have them for medical reasons. So we need to get up to about 86% of the population vaccinated, or 86% of the adult population vaccinated, because they're not going to do the kids, apparently. The JCVI have not recommended that children get the jab. Alright. Right, let's move on. Deaths. I'm sorry to report there was a further 22 deaths recorded from COVID, where COVID was mentioned in the death certificate. Let's put it that way. From Wednesday to Thursday. And that takes the daily count, or the hospital count as I call it, to 7,842. And that was, as I say, it was plus 22. Deaths and community and hospital deaths combined, 10,268. Right, let's move on to news review, because this is really what it is. You know, Thursday started with the one story in the press. And it was what a new word entered our lexicon yesterday. And that's called a pingdemic, right? This is where the UK press propaganda machine shows itself for what it is, alright? Because they all seem to come up with the term pingdemic in one go, right? As predicted by non-mainstream media reporters for a while now, shortages in the shelves, alright? Now, we've got this new term, pingdemic, came to us for the MSM, and what they're claiming is that there are 600,000 people who have been told to isolate in 1 week down that road through being pinged on the COVID app down that road. And they are claiming that it is leading to shortages of staff in the warehouses and shortages of drivers to get stuff from warehouses to stores, so there's a shortage of food on the shelf. It's a lot of pish, of course. David did a wee bit of research. Davy Boy did a wee bit of research last night. Okay, there are 30.8 million people in employment in the UK. 600,000 people barely touches the surface. But that's not the point. Davy then had a wee look around Europe to see who had comparable numbers of infections and comparable numbers of people self-isolating. So Davy went and had a wee look at what the Germans have got in numbers and of COVID cases and how many people they reckon are self-isolating. And then we had a look at France and Holland, who we know are having a torrid time at the moment with COVID. In Holland, there's about 1 million people self-isolating out of their workforce. And in France, it's comparable again, about 1 million. Funny thing about Germany, France and Holland is, none of them have got shortages of food on the shelves. A comparable amount of people self-isolating, yet none of them, do the research yourself, the search engine's your friend, none of them have got shortages of food on the shelves. And this is where this complicit and wholly owned, Tory-owned mainstream media is a problem. We are being told that 600,000 people are being told to isolate out of a workforce of 30.8 million. It would appear that all of these workers that we're talking about are in the supply chain. The whole 600,000 there must be. Now let's think about this logically. First wave. Warehouse workers, truck drivers and shop assistants were all on the front line. Shelves didn't go dry. Shelves didn't get empty. Second wave. Truck drivers, warehouse workers, shop assistants were on the front line. Shelves didn't go empty in the supermarkets. Third wave. Brexit regulations kick in. The new VAT regime kicks in. The new customs and excise regime kicks in. Bugger all's coming into the UK for Europe. Shortages on the shelf. Shelves in the supermarkets. What's to blame? Apparently, a pingdemic that taken 600,000 people out of a job, or out of the supply chains, apparently, because these 600,000 people must all be working in the supply chains for there to be an excuse for there not to be stuff on the supermarket shelves. France, Netherlands, Germany, all having a third wave. No shortages on the supermarket shelves in any of these nations. The UK is an outlier. Why is the UK an outlier? Because the UK has Brexit. It's just cut itself off its biggest market. Its biggest market's no trading with us anymore. Shortages of food. We are being lied to. But we're not just being lied to by a government. We are being lied to by a mass media. Get the numbers in your head here, folks. There are 30.8 million people actively in work at the moment. Only 600,000 people have been asked to isolate. Right? Let's be generous and say 50 or 60,000 of them work in the supply chain. So that may be 2 or 3 for each warehouse or each what we call CDCs, Central Distribution Centres. They had an outbreak at the co-op up there. One of the shifts had to be sent home to isolate. So what did they do? They split the shift between the other 2 shifts, and hey presto, within 24 hours the co-op in Newhouse was up and running again and supplying the co-op stores. Right? We are being fed pish and wind and bollocks and shite and whatever else you want to call it by our mainstream media. I've just said you can have a look yourself. The search engine's your friend. Go check out France, go check out the Netherlands, and go and check out Germany, who are all suffering this third wave. And see if they've got any shortages on the supermarket shelves. You know, we're talking, with Iceland talking about shutting shops because they need staff to open shops. Fair enough, there's only 3 or 4 people in a shop. One person in that wee shop, a wee Iceland shop, gets COVID, then bang, they're gone. But that's only one shop, you know. And that's no shutting because the shop's no food in it. That's shutting because there's been an unfortunate incident in that shop. That's not going to be that widespread. But this carry on that supermarket shelves are going empty because of the pandemic is absolute bollocks. And when we get a wee bit further into the report, we will get confirmation of this as being bollocks from DEFRA itself. Alright. So, you know, we are being misled not just by a government, but by the mainstream media. And we've had the Scottish government telling us that because of the situation in England, we're not getting food here. It would appear that the Scottish government hasn't worked out what's happening here. Or if they have worked out what's happening here, then they're trying to prevent panic in our nation. Because this is definitely bollocks. So it is. You know. And I also heard them talking about normally there'd be agency staff to pick up the slack. Well, there is. We're in high demand. But I can guarantee you, there'll still be plenty of them kicking about. There is a shortage of drivers. Drivers are jumping onto the agencies because we get to make extra spondoolies, because we get to demand what we want to go out and drive. But what we are being told by the mainstream media is rubbish. If it was a case of people isolating was causing the supply of the shortage of food supplies, then why is there no shortage of food supplies in French supermarkets, in German supermarkets, in Dutch supermarkets, in Italian supermarkets who are now in the cusp of a fifth wave, Belgian supermarkets? In fact, pick yourself a European country and then just use your search engine. Check their news outlets and see if any of them are reporting supermarket shortages because of people are self-isolating. Now this is as serious as it gets, folks. This is where Davy would go his dinger normally. But actually Davy's at the point where he's sick as a bloody, sick as whatever you like. In fact, I'm gobsmacked at what I'm seeing in the mainstream media right now. Are the people on these islands that stupid? Do the MSM, the mainstream media in these islands, treat us that stupid that we can't use a search engine to find out if people self-isolating is causing shortages in the supermarkets in other comparable European countries? Didn't he take Davy along, sitting at his desk last night, to batter in what I was looking for in my search engine? And there was nothing come up. Nothing. Checked out France, checked out Holland, checked out Germany, even as a wee sneaky look at Italy, as I say, because they're on the cusp of a fifth wave. No supermarket shortages. No food shortages reported at all. Comparable amount of people isolating. Comparable amount of people out of the workforce because they're isolating. And they'll try to tell us that all 600,000 of these people have been pinged all up in the supply chain, did they? I heard that. Right, let's move on. Moving on, Thursday, the Scottish Government has to make a press release on testing of school pupils after a report from the Education Advisory Group stated testing of pupils would be required prior to the new school term starting. The Scottish Government said testing would be encouraged but is not mandatory and is not a prerequisite for pupils prior to starting their new term at school. So that's how far we're having to go to find the story, folks. That's how far the mainstream media are going to find the story. In an advisory report, something was misworded. That was it. That's the news. So the Scottish Government has to put out a press release yesterday to say no, it's no a prerequisite for kids going to start the new term that they have to have a test. Wow. Unbelievable. Right. Thursday, along the same lines, a study done by Oxford Uni says school kids who are in close contact with the people with a positive COVID test need not self-isolate, but should instead take daily COVID tests for 10 days, which is the recognised gestation period for COVID. 200 schools took part in the study, and the modelling shows that out of 1 million kids who were self-isolating because of close contacts, only 47,000 of them went on to develop COVID. Right? So, Public Health England are advising a switch of a method down that road, and it should be adopted up this road if some kid in a class tests positive for COVID. The school would be contacted by their parent, and then the school, what they would normally do is they would get the close contacts of that kid and tell them what to self-isolate. What this study says is, no, that's the wrong thing to do. Get every one of the kids in the class that had been in close contact to have a lateral flow test. Anybody who's positive in the lateral flow test goes for a PCR test. Anybody that's negative carries on. They recommend that you have the lateral flow test every day at school for 10 days because that's the gestation period of COVID-19. Alright, so I reckon that'll be the model that will be used right across the UK. That'll be used in Wales, Scotland, England, and Northern Ireland, no doubt. Okay. And that might help cut down the disruption to children's education, which wouldn't be a bad thing. Alright. Thursday, Scottish Government announces that key workers in food and the food supply chains and food industries will not need to self-isolate if they come in contact with someone with COVID. And just like the school kids, if you get a ping and you work in one of these essential jobs, and there'll be an announcement on which sectors this will apply to, probably in about an hour or so's time. Well, it'll be after 12 anyway. So, what's going to happen here is the First Minister's going to define what's a key industry and what's no. I never heard drivers mentioned, by the way, which was interesting. How are they going to get their COVID test anyway if there's nobody to drive them there? Anyway, so the First Minister will announce what sectors will be allowed to avoid self-isolation if coming into contact with, to keep say essential services gone. So and they would take the same thing. If they get a ping, they go for a PCR test. PCR test comes back negative, they can go back to work. Lateral flow test every day for 10 days for the gestation period of. Right, so that announcement will come this afternoon, but we already know because it was said yesterday that it'll be, when they were giving an example what sort of key worker it would be, they were talking about the food industry or the food supply chains. Alright, so if you work in processing food, you work in packaging food, you work in the supermarkets, you work delivering food to the supermarkets, then I would imagine that we will all be classed as essential workers, and we won't have to self-isolate if we have a negative PCR test. And that's probably what will be announced today, alright? Thursday, SNP MP Chris Stevens suggests in a Commons debate that if Westminster won't grant, see this word grant, who the hell are they to grant us anything? Are we a possession? Are we some sort of lower being that we have to go to our almighty masters to ask permission and be granted permission to do something? Have I fucking missed something somewhere? Last time I looked, I'm as viable a human being as any other. And I don't need anybody's permission to do anything I want to do. And anything that's legal. This grant shite coming from our own MPs. I meant to fire this bugger off a bloody email yesterday. I'm glad I'm Right. Chris Stevens, get onto your local MP and your MSP and tell them if they come away with this grant shite anymore, you're going to get down to their offices and boot their arses. Nobody grants Scotland anything. Scotland does. We are viable and we are as worthy a people as anybody else, and we're bloody well sovereign to boot. We don't need that scabby pig hole down that road to grant us anything. Nothing. The people are sovereign. I'm sovereign. No, that shite hole full of thieves, crooks and carpetbaggers. Grant. See when we get this coming from our fucking MPs. Who is this Chris Stevens? Is he some sort of fucking idiot? Anyway, the idiot who thinks we need Westminster to grant us anything stood up in the Parliament and suggested we settle independence with a penalty shootout. Scotland's record at football, and this fucking idiot wants a penalty shootout. Just as well he was having a joke, eh? But it's time these fucking idiots, and I am swearing here, and I am angry here, grant! Nobody grants me nothing. I'm sovereign. You're sovereign. The people are sovereign. And the First Minister comes away with this piss and all, needs a boot up her arse. The only one I've heard say, we're no asking them for fuck all, is Mike Russell. He said we're going to do it anyway, and it's up to them if they think they've got a case to take us to court. That's what I want our MPs telling them in that fucking Parliament down that road. I want our MPs telling them, we're going to do that, we're going to do this in the term of this Parliament, and we don't give a fuck what you've got to say about it. That's a wee bit ranty today, folks, and a wee bit sweary. Please accept my apology. But when we're in MPs are belittling ourselves in that fucking house of thieves and carpetbaggers that isn't sovereign, we're sovereign, then it's enough to make you mad. Imagine standing up and saying, if you'll no grant me. That could grant me what? Anybody treated me like that, they'd get Davy's boot right up their arse. And here we've got our MPs, you know, granting. You won't grant us. Grant us what? Fuck all. Scotland's a country and the people are sovereign. We don't need granted anything. We just do it. That's the difference between a people, a sovereign people, and a subjugated people. It would appear that Mr. Stevens, Chris Stevens MP, is a subjugated person when he thinks he needs permission for that big shithole for the people of Scotland to do anything. And I see this as a pattern right through MSPs and MPs. I mean, see if Miss Sturgeon stands up and says, oh, sorry kids, the game's a bogey, they won't grant us a Section 30 order. I suggest we go into that Parliament along that road and turf her out in her arse. Hey, anyway, Chris Stevens wants a penalty shootout to settle independence. Just as well he was only joking, eh, with Scotland's history and bloody football. But I'm fed up with this. They won't grant us. We're not a subjugated people. We're in a union. You know, it's sort of like a marriage. You can get along and get a fucking divorce if you want. You don't need the permission of your partner to do it. And that's the attitude that these MPs need to take, and that's the attitude that our MSPs need to take. They want that Parliament along there to have all the powers, then just fucking take them. Rip up, get a copy of the 1998 Scotland Act, marked into that Parliament along there in Holyrood, and just rip the fucking thing up and throw it up in the air and tell the presiding officer, from now on, this Parliament decides what happens in Scotland, and no other Parliament. And let them come up the road and fucking argue the toss. They'll have to go to our courts first, because we don't recognise their legal system. Right, let's move on to the idiot who thinks he needs to be granted a Section 30 order. Thursday, DEFRA Minister George Eustace comes to the House of Thieves and Carpetbaggers to tell MPs and the public not to worry about food shortages and that there is enough food to go around. He then tells us the claims that shortages are down to the pandemic is incorrect. Well, we've just said that, haven't we? And now we've got a member of the Cabinet down that road admitting it. So the bollocks in the mainstream media is exactly that, bollocks, because we've got the Minister for the Department of Environment, Farming and Agriculture telling us nothing in we have a robust food supply, we have a robust supply chain, and that there was more people self-isolating during the first wave and the second wave and what there is now. So obviously the pandemic isn't the reason for food shortages, but we've already discussed that. But here we have a member of the Cabinet and the DEFRA Minister down that road going into Parliament and telling them that and all. So if it's not a pandemic, or pandemic, it must be bloody Brexit. Alright, so there you have it. You have a member of the Cabinet going into that Parliament yesterday and saying, whoa, don't worry, don't panic. It's nothing to do with people self-isolating. We had more people self-isolating in the first wave. And as Davies already pointed out in an earlier part of this broadcast, first wave, no food shortages. Second wave, no food shortages. Third wave, Brexit kicks in, food shortages. Alright, so there you have it. George Eustace, straight for the horse's mouth. It's no a pandemic that's causing the food shortage problem. Doesn't it take a rocket scientist to work out what it is right after he said that, does it? No, it doesn't. Thursday, Westminster announces that they will not be searching Matt Hancock's private emails for details of government business carried out by Mr Hancock and his dodgy contract dealings during the COVID pandemic. Davey says, whitewash coming up. There's going to be a public inquiry, but they're already burying the evidence. Don't be surprised if Mr Cummings goes missing as well. They certainly don't want him and his screenshots popping up at a public inquiry. Did he? Right, let's have a wee look, see who we got here. We've got Billy Henderson and Quentin. Right, Quentin, let's give you a go. If you can go on, if you can, then we'll move on to Billy. Right, where are we? Aye. So, they're already clearing up the mess before the public inquiry starts. So, Hancock won't be asked to hand over his private devices to see if there's any dodgy dealings in them that might be of relevance to a public inquiry. Okay. Thursday. Invest NI. Chief Kevin Holland tells businesses and investors there is clear benefits and opportunities for Northern Ireland thanks to the access to both markets, the EU and, of course, the GB. The Mr Holland says they are helping businesses with the paperwork for access to the UK, and they are helping businesses realign supply chains via Southern Ireland to access the EU. Mr Holland says opportunities for investment in Northern Ireland are great. For companies who want access to the EU, who have got businesses in the UK, they can move their headquarters to Northern Ireland, and they move their production to Northern Ireland, and they've got access to both markets. So Mr Kevin Holland, of business of invest in Northern Ireland, is chuffed with the situation Northern Ireland finds itself in, and it would appear that it's only the unionists out there who are no happy. Right? So actually, they're not helping with paperwork to get goods into the EU, they're helping with paperwork to get goods into the UK, but as the UK is a smaller market, farmers, businessmen, everybody in Northern Ireland is quids in, including fishermen. They're all quids in. We've got Scots boats landing their catches in Northern Ireland to get access to the EU. Registering their boats in Northern Ireland to get their catches into the EU. So, it would appear that Northern Ireland is in for a boom time, and the only people that's going to be unhappy is the small minority of hardline unionists. Even unionist businessmen are looking at it again and saying, you know what, I don't care one way or another, as long as my business survives and I'm still making barrels of cash. Money talks, folks. That's why we lost the last referendum. People vote on their wallets. Right? So, I don't know if it would go as far as reunification. We could even see Northern Ireland as a brand new separate state. So we could. Before Scotland gets there. Because Mr Kevin Holland tells his business partners, hey guys, we're quids in here. And those who have lost markets those in the UK who have lost access to Northern Ireland and the EU, may well just up sticks and move to Northern Ireland if they can. And it's been encouraged by Invest in NI, whose chairman is Kevin Holland. All right. Right, Thursday. This is the best bit of Thursday. Labour MP Don Butler is thrown out of the Commons for calling Bojo the clown a liar. Right. The acting deputy speaker asked Miss Butler to retract her comments, but Miss Butler doubled down on her accusations, saying Bojo had repeatedly lied to the House and public the House of Commons and the public. MPs are not permitted to call each other liars, so Miss Butler was asked to leave the chamber. Right. Now, Miss Butler, who is the member for Brent, left laughing. And no wonder she was laughing, right? Because Bojo will not be chuffed, because he'll not be chuffed on two fronts, right? Because Miss Butler had told the truth about him and wouldn't retract the statement. But hey, what they going to do? Bar her for the day. The place shuts the day, you know. And but more importantly, what will get Bojo angry is Miss Butler's a member of the is a lady of colour. And as we all know, Bojo's a racist. So to have a lady of colour tell him he's a liar will really piss him off. So that made Davy smile. Right, so that was quite funny. Right, Billy. Right, we'll try. So that'll really make Bojo raging. Right, I need to get shifty on here, kids. Quentin, it's not looking as if you're managing to go on. Let's have a go and see if we can get Billy on. Right, Billy, I've sent you a request. It's up to you. Right, moving on to this morning, what the papers have to say. I mean, what do you make of our MPs? But before we go there, what do you make of our MPs and MSPs? They won't grant us. See this? I'm pissed off with this. You know, it is about time. See after the 9th of August, I think we all have to march on Holyrood and demand that they no longer ask permission. Demand that they start acting like an independent nation and tell them what we're going to fake and do, whether they like it or no. Huh? You don't get granted your independence, you take it. And have we been in this union that long? Have we been suppressed that long that we've lost our pride? That we have to go with a begging bowl to ask permission to leave? Have you ever heard so much pushing all your life? It's only a treaty. And I'm starting to get pissed off with our elected representatives hiding behind this. They won't grant us this, they won't grant us that. There's the wrong type of metal in that Parliament along there. Maybe time for people like us to step up to the plate. But that doesn't mean getting elected. That means hassling our MSPs and MPs to behave in a different matter. And if they don't, then they'll have to be replaced. And we don't have to wait for general elections. They can be recalled. We can organise petitions, raise petitions, get 10,000 signatures and recall the buggers. It can be done. You want your MP or your MSP to work to behave in a certain manner, then it only takes us, the public, to put pressure on them to do it. Right, let's move on to this morning and what the papers have to say. Alright, the time goes on. Key staff to be freed from COVID quarantine. Quarantine? I thought it was self-isolation. I suppose it's the same thing. The Scotsman goes on, critical workers in Scotland set to avoid self-isolation. No, they'll know. They'll know. If they test positive after coming into close contact with somebody else, then they go into self-isolation. If they get a negative PCR test, by the way, you go into isolation for a couple of days before you get your PCR test result. So you're only going to be off for a couple of days if it's a negative. And then you've got to take a lateral flow test every day, up to 10 days, to ensure that you stay negative. So, critical workers is set to avoid self-isolation is an incorrect headline. It just is. It's lazy journalism. Right, the Sun goes with shelved isolation. It's the same story except for they're saying they're mixing the two of them. Empty shelves and self-isolation. It's a lot of bollocks again, you know. The Herald goes on. Shoppers urged against pandemic panic buying. Well, I have to agree with that. Don't go out and start panic buying. You know. What supplies are coming in, we'll get to the shelves in spits and spurts. Alright. Probably won't make it as far north as here. Most of the foodstuffs come in the southeast. Kent is being turned into one big warehouse and holding pen. So the people of Kent won't see any shortages because they'll just go along the warehouse and take what they need. There's 18 million people in Greater London. so they won't go with it either. The chances of that stuff making it north of the Watford Gap are slim to bugger all, as most it'll come in for Kent. But what does get to you is it'll come in spurts and stop and start spurts. And you didn't get the request, Billy. We'll send me again. A bit late now, Billy, actually. So, we are going to suffer up here. I mean, the warning shot was across the bows yesterday, when we were told by the First Minister that shortages of staff doing that road, or we were told by Westminster that shortages of staff doing that road will affect supplies coming north. But as we've already discussed, it's bollocks. I've had a look around Europe. Comparable amount of infections, comparable amount of people self-isolating, per capita, of course, and a comparable amount of people self-isolating out the workforce. No food shortages in anywhere else in Europe. So if it's no that, and we've got George Eustace, the DEFRA Minister, coming telling us it's no that, then it's going to be Brexit, isn't it? Okay. The Herald goes on, we've done the Herald. The Daily Field goes with, stop the pandemic madness. So I guess they want NHS England to, or Public Health England to shut off the track and trace doing that road because it's got nothing to do with the NHS. It's Circle. Right, what we got? The other loony rag, the Express has, keep working. Daily COVID test ends pandemic crisis. Pandemic crisis. The word was invented yesterday and the crisis was invented yesterday. The fact is that supplies coming in from Europe where England gets 60% of its food, it's just only coming in. That's the truth here. The eye goes with COVID-19 standstill warning for Scotland, and that's what we were told. Because there's nothing getting into England, they're going to tell us that it's a pandemic that that's making ourselves go short up here. Truth is, of course, whatever gets in will go straight into the Kent holding pen and be distributed through the southeast and southwest of England, where there's huge amounts of the population, and the rest of us will deal with it. But those of you who've seen my video on food security last year will know that. Right, the Telegraph goes with Scots avoid a pandemic because of simple app. And that's true. The reason why phones are no pinging all over the place up here apparently is when you get a positive test here and you're using the NHS Scotland track and trace app, you've got to put a code into your phone. And that then frees up your phone to give the information to the database, and the database can then start pinging other phones. So the reason why things are not going mental down here, up here, is because, well, not that many people are testing positive, a couple of thousand, and that would only equate to a few thousand more. Maybe three, well, let's say the average ones get 3, maybe 4 close contacts. So, and they're probably family members. You know, they already know. So, because you have to put a code, what they've done down there is fully automated. But, you know, I've got a funny feeling down there that the pings were going out specifically to make up this pandemic. And the shortages of staff, allegedly, to cover the real problem. And the real problem is Brexit. But, of course, this is going... And, you know what? It doesn't surprise me because Bojo's bounds for the vaccine rollout is more or less stopped. You know, people are sick of hearing them say vaccine rollout is an excuse for everything. It's even wearing thin at Prime Minister's questions now. Nobody's buying the bollocks. You know what I mean? Right, where were we? The record goes on. Bradley killer, pal in revenge machete attack. I think that's that boy who got murdered along there anyway. One of his pals has been targeted apparently. The National goes with, let's decide Indy with penalty shootout. That's that idiot again. Chris Stevens, the guy who thinks he needs permission for Scotland to do something for England. Idiot. And praise for MP thrown out for saying PM lies. And that was the last story we covered, and that was Dawn, what was her name? That was Dawn Butler. They say, and the star goes with Bog Roll Bandits at 12 o'clock. In other words, panic buying started again, folks. And that means Davey might have to do another panic buying rant. An absolute panic buying rant. Now, Billy, you'll get about 2 minutes, son, because I'll need to move on. I definitely need to move on. Better get that changed. Hey, Billy, I've added you. I'll give you a couple of minutes, see what you want to say, if you can get in. Guess not. Right, folks. The weekend's coming up. I don't intend to get involved in anything this weekend if something daft comes up. In fact, the silly season started, so there'll be a lot of daft things in the press. Who's this? Right, Miss Kelly or Mr. Kelly, let's have a look and see if you can get on. You only get a couple of minutes, but you never go. See if you can work out how this works. Adding. Right, so I intend to have a quiet weekend. But as I say, the silly season's about to start. The already outrageous mainstream media is about to get even more outrageous. So it should be hilarious. Maria, you sent me an attachment. Very good. Yeah, it looks like the people can't work out how you go on. Right, anyway, it's time to wrap this up, folks. Sun's coming up. I've got a full load on. I need to go and tip it in Grangemouth and get back out and get some more. Pick up more gear. So need to get a move on. So remember, support the independent media, because the mainstream media has seen me this inventing of the pandemic. Pingdemic is outrageous. Outrageous. Hi, Alistair. Thanks very much, mate. So support the mainstream media, support the independent media, support Broadcasting Scotland, support Independence Live, support Indy Live Radio, support Caledon Media, support Trues Radio, support the iScot magazine, and support the national newspaper. And support independent bloggers and bloggers. There's some very good ones out there that know about Scottish independence. You've got Open Democracy, you've got Double Down News, you've got Good Law Project, all putting out fantastic stuff, folks. Use your search engine. Your search engine is your friend. Alright? And if they've got crowdfunders going, you've got a couple of quid to spare, throw them in the pot and keep them going. Now, remember, folks, facts. Now, Sarah and I have been discussing this. We're going to keep to about 2 metre social distancing, except for when we're indoors, where 1 metre would be much more acceptable when you're trying to have a conversation, unless you're in a bubble, of course. All right. So, face coverings in enclosed public spaces, avoid large gatherings, clean hands and surfaces regularly, 2 metre social distancing when you're outside. And if you're in a restaurant or a pub, it's 1 metre anyway, and you're in your own bubble, so that's fine. And get a test. I think most of us on this who are watching this have got lateral flow tests, and we're doing them a couple of times a week anyway, so yeah, get a test. Might send your results in. You get a wee code to send your results in when you've tested yourself, alright? Have a nice weekend. Look after each other. Be kind to each other, and we'll see you all on Monday. As I say, later in August, I'm going to have, because the silly season, both parliaments are going to be shut. In August, I'm going to have a wee break, because I don't want to suffer burnout again. All right, catch you later, folks. And MD2 Cafe, we'll see you in the pub tomorrow night. Bye.